Threw my head to the side and said, I'm angry. Welcome, everybody, to the Creed of Crypto live stream. My name is Bro Boy Crypto. I have here with me, as always, my friend and co-host, Crypto Ewok. We are back after a long hiatus. It's been like, well, a little bit, about 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, actually. Took Christmas Day, New Year's Day. They both landed on a Wednesday. So what are you going to do? We did a little emergency broadcast, of course, whenever Jesus, I can't keep track of all the FUD anymore. But whenever I don't even know, the Interpol Red Notice shit came out. We did a little pop-up stream there and then took the rest of the FUD off until now. So we are back. We are glad to see all of you guys. It looks like we haven't lost any viewers. We got DJ and Moonboy here. Welcome in. It's Scrubhead. I don't recognize you, but I love the name. The Rat, Valiant, Low Key, some familiar names. Appreciate you guys being here. Smash the like on the way in to support Real DeFi. If you're still here right now and feeling positive about things, even if you're not feeling positive, but you're just still here, you're a real one. That's really all I got to say, because we got a lot of random stuff going on right now that isn't always fun. We saw Hexologist make a little bit of a gaffe whenever he started his stream up last night with the title of the video that was pretty comical, I thought. But a lot of interesting stuff going on right now, and we're going to talk about it, as you can see in the thumbnail. 2025 or bust. And it doesn't just come down to Pulse Chain, but Bitcoin, Ethereum, especially Ethereum right now. Things are not exactly moving. We were getting a little bit more of a pump from Bitcoin here over the last few days before a kind of major sell-off whenever some U.S. jobs data crap came out. But, we figured to get bullish here as we get into Inauguration Day on the 20th for Trump being sworn in again as president in the U.S., of course. A lot of good bullish things to be looking forward to, even though the Fed's been hawkish and stuff like that. We're going to get to so much tonight. We got a lot of stuff to cover. So hit us up in the chat, questions, comments. Just how are you guys feeling? I'd like to get a little bit of a pulse, get it, of kind of how you guys are feeling about the ecosystem and things like that right now. Are you getting shaken out? Are you comfortable with where we're at right now? There's just so much going on. But Ewok, how are you doing this fine Wednesday evening?
I'm doing great, man. Nice little break, like you said, and yeah, to those people who are still here, haven't capitulated, haven't sold, you're the real ones. You guys are going to be the ones that are probably the happiest at the end of all of this. And yeah, just the amount of FUD I've seen it compared to the early days of Hex, and it's funny because I don't know that I feel the same way. I think it was worse then, because then it was like, this guy is going to run off with all your money. Well, now we have something that's running that can't be stopped. Doesn't matter what really happens to him. This can all continue. And it's up to us as the community at that point to kind of take over and lead the charge. But we know it's not going anywhere. So I don't see it quite as bad. I know there's a lot of rumors here lately, and we'll talk about those. But other than that, it's just part of that. And don't forget, we haven't even inaugurated the new president into office. There's a lot of things that are going to happen here in the next 2 or 3 weeks that are extremely bullish in themselves. So yeah, hats off to all of those who have stuck around and not sold and not bought into the FUD that some of these people are trying to create.
Yeah, there's a new thing, it seems, every single day. We've got Watchgate going on yesterday. And the funny thing is, a lot of this Finland crap is stuff that happened months ago, or like sometime in 2024, over 6 months ago, that people are publishing articles about now and things. It's
same with the Red Notice, man. That happened back in August or September. Like, everything's so delayed, but once just a story gets a little bit of traction, then everybody seems to just jump on it. And, for those that don't hear about it when it does happen, or those that, don't think it's anything of major concern, those are the ones that, like I said, they run with the stories, then everybody gets a hold of it. And that's what causes the major heartache for everybody.
Yeah. No, I hear you. We're going to get into all that and more. Let's start off a little bit with Bitcoin and ETH right now. We'll see where the market is overall. BTC had been looking strong again, like I said, after a little bit of a pullback here. It's at just about 95K with some recovery today. Ethereum at just over 3,300. Its ratio to BTC still horrible. I think it's at 0.035 or so right now. Now, of course, in dollar value, it has moved up in the last few weeks as Bitcoin has moved up, but we still have yet to see that Ethereum, there's really nothing for sure to say in the chart that Ethereum has bottomed for sure against BTC. So we'll wait for that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll get into this. So maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but if Bitcoin continues to a target, like I'm going to mention in a moment that Bob Lucas just the other day was tweeting about his thoughts on the cycles. Obviously, he talks about the 30-day cycles, 60-day cycles, 4-year cycles with Bitcoin. And he doesn't give out like actual projections specifically very often, but he did say flat out that he expected a 280K BTC in October or November of this year. I don't think the time is really that much of a surprise to anybody, but the kind of loftiness of the price, I think, is kind of surprising. Now, I think he also had a higher target back in 2021 that it never made it to either. But in theory, his price of 280K BTC, if Ethereum only kept the ratio that it's holding right now, the 0.035, which would be heinous. I mean, I think it's definitely going to do better than that. But if it only did and BTC's topped out at that number, you'd be looking at about a $10,000 Ethereum, which honestly, I would be happy with. I know some people would be like, what the hell, a 2x from last cycle and things like that. I know some people would be upset by that. But I still think we'd have a lot of room to run, even with just a 10K Ethereum, if that is what would happen. That said, if Bitcoin gets to that price, I do think the ETH ratio obviously gets much, much better than that. We probably look at more 15K plus. But anyway, just in terms of BTC right now, I mean, hey, we've turned the calendar. I mean, we're in 2025 now, so there is no more like, what are we going to run up to by the end of the year? You know, we've got just all systems go ahead of us here. Trump's, like you said, about to be inaugurated. So what do you think timeline wise maybe we're looking at for Bitcoin over the course of this year, all of 2025, how you see it, Ewok, and maybe how it compares to past cycles you've been in? Obviously 2017 was pretty different. I mean, things were pretty weird then, much different landscape than we have right now, 2021 and where we are right now. So what do you think about BTC? And then we can get into the ETH side of it here too soon.
Yeah. So my speculation, my spidey sense tells me that within the next, what's inauguration, the 20th, I believe.
Yeah.
So I think within another couple days, you're probably going to see people trying to front run it. What I'm not sure of is on inauguration day, you know, when the changes are made to the SEC and all that good stuff, will that be a sell the news event? I'm very curious to see what happens on that day and the couple days following that, especially if it does run up in advance. You know, I think we could probably push this level back here to the 108, 115,000 in a short little run up. I think it could do that. But the big run up that I kind of see happening is more, you know, March, April-ish. And I don't know if we get a full blow off top. I mean, you guys will notice when it goes, it runs in candles like these that we saw back here in November, right? I mean, you see just large green candles, then you see a couple sideways ones, and then another large one. So you'll notice the pattern, and that will be the actual start of the, you know, the I don't want to say the start of the blow off top, but and then the next question becomes, will it double top? You know, will it take a little pullback and then make a higher run up in later in the year, like August, September, maybe? I could totally see that scenario playing out. As for Lucas saying 280, I think that's extremely high. Even Richard called a 240 at one point on this cycle, which kind of surprised me. I thought that was high too. You know, who knows? Could it hit 200? It's very possible with the amount of influx coming in once the changes are made. But I really think what we want to hear is SEC is dropping all these cases. They're not pursuing the crypto stuff. That will breathe a sigh of relief into a lot of people. They remove the Coinbase case. They remove all the things against all the exchanges, and I think that just becomes a catalyst kind of thing. I do see at that point Ethereum just taking off as well. So yeah, I think 15K is probably on the low end for this cycle for Ethereum. But I could see it a 200K Bitcoin. I don't know how much higher that it'll go after that, but you almost have to run these. You run the charts and you see the movements and the averages and where it went, and then you can kind of put it relative to the new cycle that we're in. And I believe it puts us up in between 180 and 220 would be my guess. Now, will that happen again? Like, because last year, remember, we got the 65K top in April, I believe it was.
Last cycle, yeah.
Or last cycle, sorry. And then, it did go up and make a 67K retop for a day in September. So, will it kind of eclipse that, and by how much? That'll be the interesting thing to kind of pay attention to if it does do the double cycle type thing. But yeah, I mean, you're going to start to hear, once it starts to run, you're going to hear all these people going $500,000 $1 million Bitcoin and all that stuff. And it's just more to get people, the normies that aren't in crypto, to think they still have a chance. But when you realize it, it's even a 300,000 is only a 3x from here.
Right.
Now, traditional finance would love a 3x, right? Because it takes many, many years to get something like that in the S&P or the Dow or anything like that. So, that's kind of what I foresee anyway, as far as Bitcoin goes. But again, back to Ethereum, I really think it's going to take off. We have not seen a whole lot of action. There has been ETFs that are approved, and it's just not quite happening yet. And I'm not sure why. What the holdup is, or are people just getting as much as they can before they send it? I kind of have to believe that, because this range, the whole way back, even as of last year, we just haven't done a whole lot. It's done a whole lot of consolidation, and we're still at the same level. We broke 4,000 once or twice, and just hanging out at these low 3,000 levels. I just think it's a very good opportunity for a lot of these people that are in the bigger markets to acquire as much as possible. So that's where I'm sitting. But yeah, I mean, I think 17 to 20 is probably a decent assumption. If Bitcoin can go to 200,000, Ethereum can definitely make it to 18, 20,000, I believe, if not a little bit more.
That would make sense to me with BTC at that number, and especially ratio wise, it would make a lot of sense. You listed so many things of why, despite recent times, and especially in our ecosystem, and really just all coins in general, why I think we should continue to be very bullish on this cycle. You didn't even mention, like, I don't think you did, like, all the institutional money, because it was such a story of last year, like the ETFs and everything. So we've got that, Trump coming in. The biggest thing I think you said recently that was a huge piece of news this week that I don't even really think I put in our notes, but this just came out yesterday, that the judge in the Coinbase SEC case basically delayed that lawsuit, and I think deferred it to the appellate courts, because basically, I don't want to get this wrong, but it came down to the Howey test wording, and just how it's essentially like, does it. That's the whole problem that we've always had with the SEC, obviously, is the Howey test isn't really applicable to crypto. A lot of the rules don't make any sense. It was something that was written, 100 and some years ago or something. So that judge, she obviously is seeing that. And so that one's gotten delayed. That thing being thrown out, if it does, or just, not being a positive for the SEC, which it looks pretty clear it's not going to be positive for the SEC, that's going to be huge for altcoins, especially. I mean, Coinbase is an exchange where, most of what they do business-wise is off of altcoins, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, that's huge. All the SEC stuff is huge. Obviously, Gensler is out on the 20th, and Paul Atkins will take over. And you got to wonder, like, not just the Coinbase lawsuit, but also just these changes within the SEC. We've talked about it for some time. How will it affect the case against Richard Hart? Which, we're going to get to that in a moment, but we assume that we're within the final 3 weeks here, a window of time of when we're going to get a ruling on that motion to dismiss hearing in his case. If not, we could be days away, literally. So there's just so much lining up. The dominoes are falling that, I think we can continue to be bullish. And yeah, we'll have to see, like you said, if we get kind of a double top type thing this year or what it is going to look like. And I think something that some people should remember too, and this will kind of spill over into Paul's chain, but there are altcoins that will run into 2026. Other cycles, like in 2021, everything was basically over. Not everything, but Bitcoin was over. Ethereum was mostly over by the end of 2021. There was a huge red daily candle in December of 21 that pretty much invalidated everything and showed like, hey, we're heading somewhere else here now, into negative territory. But there were still things that did run a bit into 2026. So keep in mind that it doesn't mean that if you haven't hit this number or whatever by the end of 2025, that it's definitely over. You just want to have your head on a swivel, obviously, at that time. That's all.
I think you mean 2022, right? Things ran into that.
Yeah. Things ran into 2022. So I'm saying that, some things could still run into 2026. Yeah, my bad.
Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah. So
it's possible. I mean, it's funny though. Once the market really ends, it becomes a game of what is the chair game?
Musical chairs.
Musical chairs where the last one standing, and it happens kind of quickly. There will be things where people could rotate into, but Axis has been a big proponent of it extending into 26, and I guess it really kind of depends on that second double top, right? When will that happen? And because people are going to try and catch, people try and rotate money, which I don't often understand because it's a very, very dangerous game to play. Trying to take profits on one, pull out, get profits on another, pull out, try and get, you can only do that so many times before it really is going to catch you. And you probably aren't going to time things correctly. Whereas if you just buy, hold the certain things, let them go up and take profits as it goes, that's a little bit safer, because if it does happen to dip on you, and you end up missing out or losing the gains that you would have had to try and get something else, it's a very dangerous game to play in my opinion anyway.
Well, and I was kind of not necessarily meaning that Bitcoin would go still pumping into 2026. Like I know Axis has talked about that thesis. I just meant like random other alts.
Right.
Will, I mean, obviously crypto is so huge. You'll have stuff that does flat out do well throughout 2026, just how crypto kind of goes, because there's so many tokens. But
I didn't think you meant Bitcoin. I'm talking about trying to find that hidden gem is what I'm saying. After you've gotten out of Bitcoin, once you think that is the top, and Ethereum usually follows historically 28 days later after the top of Bitcoin is the top of Ethereum. That's when alt season really kind of starts to take effect. And then, as those things get where they're going, people try and time them and get into other things. Well, what I'm saying is that's a very perfect time for you to put something in something that's already seen its day, and it dumps. And then there goes all your profits. It's just it's a dangerous game was my point.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I want to finish off on this point, then we got to get to Paul's chain. But we are seeing, speaking about the timing of the cycle right now, Rand Nooner, of course, and so many others. I mean, he's kind of the chief one, which he's kind of at the point, and I'm not hating on the guy, although he definitely does the affiliate link thing and all that stuff. But, I mean, he's basically like the counter trade master at this point, like just the things that he tells us, because he has a very large audience, and, he's very wealthy at this point, and whatever, he can do whatever he wants, really. But he's already out there like, I'm telling you right now, I'm selling everything in May. And that's really been the narrative that's spilling down to most people in traditional crypto corners that I'm seeing all over Twitter. I mean, everybody was hit so hard a lot of us included, at the end of the last cycle and were bag held, that if they've been here this whole time, they're like, I'm telling you now, I'm not letting that happen again. I'm out of here by May. And like I would say the majority of the market is prepared for that. The majority of the market is wanting to get out early. And again, if somebody like Rand is saying, oh, I'm out of everything in May, he's probably getting out of everything in the spring, which I guess May is still technically the spring. But I mean, he's going to be, February, March, stuff like that. That's probably when he's talking about getting out. And maybe he a guy like him is going to be fine either way. But I think what that really could line up for is, we keep talking about double top because that's just what happened to happen in 2021. I don't know that we'll get that this time. I think that because so many people are so eager to get out that are here right now, even when retail starts to come in, we might actually see maybe Bitcoin top out, I don't know, 150K, 175K, something like that, maybe by May. And then we do have a proper, exactly what you want to see, where it doubles whatever it goes to. Maybe not doubles, but goes to well over 200K later in the year or something.
Yeah.
Or who knows? But we've talked about 26, maybe a little bit into 26. But I just think so many people are so eager to bail on this thing now, despite all the bullish things that you and I just talked about, that we could really see an opportunity even a calendar year from now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do get it. Everybody's so familiar with the 4-year cycle. We in this ecosystem of, people are very nervous right now because you lose that long-term vision. I mean, we've also been, in the doldrums for 3 years now, but you're like, hey, it's 2025. This is it. Like, this is showtime. And we're still mired in this. Well, we may still have another 12 calendar months. I mean, and a lot can happen in a post Bitcoin halving year. So yeah. I don't know if you had any final thoughts. Just on some of these big influencers timing. I just think so many people are trying to get out early this year.
Well, it's because the bear market has been so brutal, and for a lot of people, this is their first experience. They just want to get in profit, and they're thinking to themselves, "Man, I don't know that I'm cut out for this." I think that's the mentality that you're seeing, and I think people will exit early because of how brutal it is, but it happens every cycle, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's just more in our faces this time because there is so much bad, and we are all sitting here kind of waiting for this stuff to make a move and do something that it is a little bit more, I don't want to say exaggerated, but this community, most of us that were in Hex are down 90-some%. Even though we're still up 100x from the early days, it's been rough. It's been rough on a lot of people, and I think there are those people that I've heard about just saying, it gets to $1, I'm out. If Hex gets to $1, I'm out. I'm selling it.
It's a long ways away.
It is a long way away. I get that, but I mean, they're putting number values on it, whether it's 50 cents, 75 cents, dollar, whatever it may be. There are people that have their mind made up that are just like, I'm not cut out for this anymore, and I just want to be done. So that mindset for a lot of people can be the catalyst for that big dip and then another move up because it's that less heavy, right? You get a lot of extra weight out, and people think it's still running. There's people onboarding still, new people getting in, and it does take another hefty step up. So that's how it goes, though. I mean, there will always be people that sell too early. There will always be people that buy too late. It's just that's part of it.
Yeah, psychology of the market. Good discussion. If you guys are enjoying the stream so far, do us a favor, peg that like button to support Real DeFi. We support all you guys being here tonight. Checks my pulse. Appreciate you being here as well. That's right. Long term. That's the mindset you got to have. Turning our attention specifically to Pulse Chain. So yeah, prices have been utter trash basically since the Interpol FUD back on, I don't know, it was right before Christmas. So a lot of shitty Christmas presents from crypto this year. We had Jerome Powell and the Fed scaring everybody. And then that bullshit article came out. We just had countless stuff basically since then. So yeah, prices have been down at Pulse Chain obviously for about 2-3 weeks now. Not really recovering that move from the Interpol fake stuff here yet. And again, we mentioned earlier. Well, we'll look at the prices first before we get into the kind of narratives here. But we do have Pulse at 4 zeros and a 4.6. Pulse X 4 zeros to 8. 157 is the price of ink right now. Hex at 1.3 cents and eHex at 00238 at the moment. So everything just on this pullback and continuing to hang out down here. I mean, we're virtually at the low that it wicked down to the evening of the initial interpol thing. So we're not far off from that. I think it went down to 4.2 or something like that. So we've floated back down here a bit. But if we just purely from a technical point, because none of that stuff is really going to matter like long term for the price or anything. It's just this short term noise that people are reacting to. And if you want to pull up the pulse chart, Ewok, just from a technical point, I mean, and to see where we are, like, have we lost any key levels of support through all this stuff to where it's like, oh man, we're in big trouble now? It lost a weekly super trend, or how do you think it looks right now overall if we zoom out a little bit?
Well, looking at the daily, we have not broken this last level of support, which has several touch points from back in September, October. That level is right about the 433, which is a little ways to go. So we haven't broken through that. We are on a like a 24. So when you look at the daily, I think we're up a couple percent on the day. So, you know, it is starting to kind of correct itself. And again, we haven't broken through that last resistance that was back here. So that's a very good sign. If it does, you know, again, it could free fall all the way down to the 377 area, because there is a lot of support and resistance in that area too. But yeah, I mean, again, this is all the FUD. People are just tired of it. This big candle here, I don't even know what this move was. It was a
Isn't that the interval thing?
40% drop in one day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, this day. 38% basically.
Yeah.
38% in one day on the no, that wasn't. Was that the 24th?
Or it was literally like right before Christmas Eve. So yeah.
Okay. Yep. That was it then. So yeah, I mean, and it corrected nicely. It started to correct even before the day was over, but it did wick down pretty good. It made some corrections, and then, you know, of course, people bought it up a little bit, and then they sold again. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know. I don't see anything overly concerning. We haven't, like you said, we haven't broken any. Let's take a look at the weekly anyway.
Yeah.
See where we're at. Yeah, we still have a ways to go even on the weekly charts. There is still some support back here, like right about the 4.4-ish area.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're still 4.5. So we're holding okay. This is a nice W kind of forming here. Well, the W was invalidated here when that interpol stuff came out, but we were on the pace to have it make it look like a nice W formation.
Yeah, things were looking good. It's crazy how quickly you forget. Things were feeling and looking really good right before that. I mean, we were at what, like double or 4 zeros and an 8 or so. I mean, it was maybe not quite that high, but I mean, it was, well, yeah, you said a 40% drop, so maybe a little bit lower than that. Yeah,
almost a head and shoulders pattern here on the weekly. So yeah, I mean, again, as long as we stay above this support at about 4.4, I think we're going to be okay. There's not much more. Like, what more news could come out other than the case being lost and Richard in jail, both at the same time? I think something like that would have to happen. Not that I want to jinx it or anything like that, but again, these protocols still run fine, even if all of that other stuff does happen. But we'll talk about that, you know, in a bit with.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. It wouldn't really sway me either way. And like what you just said about like if the case is lost, what would lost mean? With a
Well,
judge's decision right now, it would literally just mean like, no, it's just going to continue to go on. Like she's not dismissing any part of
it's
this.
not dismissed. Yeah, we wouldn't even
Right.
get a loss. That would
Right.
come
That was my
way down the road.
clarification.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, that's all. Well, that's a good transition to kind of look at that. So we are again, I mean, we're past the 60-day point to get a judge's ruling on. And again, remember, this was a motion to dismiss hearing. This wasn't like, the overall hearing to get a judgment. That's one thing to remember. So we're probably going to be getting the judge's decision on whether this thing is going to be dismissed in its entirety based on jurisdiction and other factors, whether just part of it is or whether none of it is, and it's going to move on. We should be getting it in a matter of days. I'd honestly be shocked if we didn't get it by the end of next week. We're certainly going to get it by the end of January. And I've seen this discussion the last few days, and I feel pretty strongly about one side. So I'll ask you before I share my opinion, but people have been speculating on Twitter what the fact that it's been this long to get a decision, whether that is a good or a bad thing or doesn't matter at all. Nuclear Herbs obviously has weighed in here and there, but I'm just seeing some people go back and forth on that. What do you make of it, Ewok? I mean, the fact that we're on our way to about 75 days since this thing, October 31st was the date. Do you think it's good or a bad omen that Judge Carroll is taking this long on a decision?
I think it's a good thing. I think it might have been Nuclear Herbs that had said it originally, but when a judge finds reason to dismiss or even partially dismiss, it has to be well written up. There has to be reasons. There has to be eloquent thought put into it, especially against the SEC, right? The case that other than her saying the case you brought to me is shit and has no merit. She's got to put that in decent terms. I'm sure she had some vacation time for the holidays as well. You got to figure there's let's say 2 weeks. So out of the 75 days, 14 of those probably don't count. But again, I see it as positive only because, like I said, there has to be some thought put into this. I do see at least a partial dismissal. I think the whole hex thing gets thrown out. If anything, they may go into the misappropriation of funds. I don't think we get full dismissal. I think they're going to try and get something out of it, unless the judgment doesn't come until the changing of the guards at the SEC, and someone above that decides to essentially put a hold on all crypto cases. At that time, it would be one of them, right? I think it would kind of just go away. So maybe they're waiting for that. Like I don't know that a judge would purposefully delay a decision waiting for a changing of the guards type thing.
Yeah, I don't think so.
If it starts to happen, so then that raises the next question. What happens if this case doesn't get fully dismissed, the case gets started, and at that point, after whatever, they decide to put a hold on all cases? Would that include the active ones too, or just the ones that haven't really got started yet? That's a question that I would love to know the answer to, because that's important, right? I mean, you're hiring these lawyers to do something, and most lawyers aren't going to take something that they don't have faith in winning. So what happens at that point? That's where I kind of am right now. But I don't see this as a bad thing. I don't see it taking this long as a bad thing at all, only because it does take more time to put out a decision that has thoughtfulness behind it. So
I agree 100%. Yeah, I think that her taking on the longer side for this only bodes better potentially for us, because it's a motion to dismiss hearing. It's not a final judgment hearing. So that means, and again, Nuclear Herbs has talked about before, in most cases in general, civil cases, 10% or so actually do even get dismissed. So for now, this one, he said he thinks has a way, way better shot. But for this one to take this long means that she's actually probably mulling it over pretty seriously. And again, like you said, I do think the most probable outcome is that that part of it is dismissed, which is, not a loss. I mean, that's gigantic. That's really big and shows what direction she's kind of thinking in. And that she's really paying attention to all this, which, I mean, she showed at the hearing, obviously.
Right.
So yeah, I think that part of it will get dismissed and that we'll move on from there. And I think that, again, yeah, the reason for her taking so long is because that's what she's doing. I do not think the changing of the guard really is having any effect with it. But what I think will happen going forward is we'll probably just get, not that it hasn't already been like this from the SEC, but especially with Gensler gone, the wind being out of their sails in terms of just trying to corruptly, ruin a bunch of cryptocurrencies and stuff. It'll just be even more of a limp dick shitty effort from them to show up and say things. I mean, it already is terrible, but I think it'll just be even worse basically by the time we get into this year. So yeah, I'm feeling really good about it overall. I think it's imminent essentially as far as a decision. Had another point about this for you too.
Yeah, and as far as time frame goes, I mean, I wouldn't even mind waiting until that happens. I wouldn't be upset if we don't get a decision after the inauguration happens, after the new people take place. I think that would be beneficial to everybody as well.
Yeah, I think so too. In terms of Paul's just kind of price performance and how we could see this cycle, not really taking the SEC thing into consideration or anything, just now focusing on Pulse Chain and the actual good stuff that's going to help move us forward. What do you think the possible plan could be for any interested parties or certain whales that may have, 170,000 Ethereum or other interest in buying this ecosystem up? I'm wondering what your thoughts are, because last cycle, which you were there for the entire thing, obviously Ewok, but Hex really started to pump hard a little bit after Ethereum hit its first all-time high. It was Hex was more of a laggard to Ethereum at that point. And then we've talked about this many times in this ecosystem, Hex, Pulse Chain, whatever, the Richard Heart tokens, that they have their own like little moment in the sun, which Richard obviously craves because all the attention is on his ecosystem. So that happened with Hex in 2021 after Ethereum hit, I think, what Richard believed was going to be its high. We saw Hex do really, really well, do that whole run up to 53, 56 cents, whatever. Now, he may not have thought this was going to happen, but he did call the double top, obviously. And then Ethereum actually got a little bit higher than it did the first time in the cycle, went up to 4,800 eventually. So I'm wondering from you on a timeline, kind of just broad brushes over the course of this year, is there a case? We just talked a little bit earlier at the top of the show about like altcoins, how some could still run going into 2026, or ones could run really in that last 60 days at the end of the year, even if Bitcoin looks like it's already topped off. Could we be seeing that from this ecosystem? Could we be seeing Pulse Chain on, I don't want to call it like a delayed bull season of its own, but kind of you're in the spotlight, you're the star of the show. Bitcoin has already hit all-time highs. All these other things have popped off. And then Pulse Chain has its own season where it is the star of crypto, essentially, because we did see that with Hex. I mean, we saw it September of 21. 56 cents, number 3 by market cap in the world. Only Nomics, of course, actually showed that at the time. But could we see something like that? What do you think about the time frame and Richard's propensity to want to be, the star that everybody's paying attention to?
Yeah, I see it. I mean, depending on what happens, we can't assume or hope that it will. But I can imagine a lot of value coming into Pulse Chain once Ethereum does its thing. It's kind of hard to not think that would play a big part. Now, even if it doesn't move, or even if it doesn't buy a bunch, even if it just bridges over that value, that increases a lot of things as well. So yeah, there is somebody who does like to be the star of the show, who wants glory, who wants appreciation, who wants the kudos that go with it. I can totally see that happening, but again, he's also smart enough to not just throw money to make things run up so that people can sell. So I do think it would be strategically placed along the way, by wallets that we're probably not watching. There is that Railgun uh, protocol out there that can allow people to use wallets that no one knows where it came from, kind of thing, that aren't being watched and aren't being tracked. So it's not going to be a big hey, look, this is me kind of thing. But you are going to see it delayed. It will do its own thing, I think, after the cycle, so that it is, the spotlight is on this ecosystem, and say, hey, here's what we can do. Look over here. And Hexero said it. That was my next point.
Right.
If PDI does happen to peg, that's another story in itself, that
Like
gets
the
attention.
story. Yeah. It would
Well,
be
well, it's not the. I mean, it's not the story, but
it's
it's
the
it's
story.
it's part of the whole thing. Of,
Mhm.
look what I made, look what is happening over here. We took a stable coin and pegged it without pegging it. Like, it was what, 0.000 whatever it was.
Mhm.
And look what we've done. That just kind of adds to the whole thing. There's been many opportunities. Richard has had several opportunities, even in the Christmas video, to denounce this thing,
Yeah.
and it still hasn't been. And for me, he's been active on Twitter. He's been at, or X, whatever you want to call it. He made the video. He talked about a lot of things, but he still hasn't yet said, I have nothing to do with this, or hinted in any way that people should be careful
Right.
of it.
Which he
And I think,
would. I mean, that's his
yes,
whole MO. Yeah.
well, yes. I mean, he likes to warn people, right? When things are not looking good, when there's bad things out there, he's going to try to help people, just like he did with Luna and Celsius, and those protocols when he did it then. So because it hasn't been done yet, I mean, I'm just increasingly more bullish on that he may have something to do with this, or he is behind it, or he knows it's going on and he's playing along. You know what I mean? He's assisting with the whole thing, whether it's the Maria, the 414, whatever it is. He could realize, and then they could be possibly pulling some strings together. So, yeah, this is another thing too, that when the spotlight is on, I think it's really going to be, look what we did, kind of thing. So,
You didn't even mention too, he just made that big tweet last night about the postcard competition that's going on
yeah.
right now.
Well, these
That
guys have been talking about that in the chat here as well. So I
Well,
don't.
and my point isn't necessarily about that contest, which is cool, and I voted on it and stuff. My point about it was Richard, throughout his tweet where he had like a very long, comprehensive list of brainstorming ideas, had multiple things like intimating a stable coin. Like, it was clear that that was part of some of the things that he was pitching and some of the things that he said.
Yeah,
Silent Schiller, good point. Richard wants bragging rights of designing things that do 10,000x from their bottoms. He's not going to completely 100% transparent, completely be transparent with his idea behind how he will reward those who stayed. I've been saying this exact thing for a while. I couldn't agree with you more. And
yep.
Ewok, on the other hand, thinks that RH is going to come out and beat his chest and say, I was behind PDI and here's what I did and all these things. I don't think he's ever going to take credit for it. I mean, he'll brag about it. He already has bragged about it. He's bragged that has happened on the chain. I don't think he's going to come out and say anything about anything that he may or may not have had to do with it or anything. And obviously, I'm just messing with you, Ewok. But yeah, I think it's very interesting. this is just happening this way organically
Yeah.
like this. Yeah.
Yep. And I think it's better that way. I really do. I think it's better that way when you get enough people believing behind it. And then maybe we find out later or whatever, uh, you know, uh, it adds to the mystique a little bit of it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I don't know if I had any real points other than that stuff there. I guess you did mention a couple things about his Christmas stream. We haven't really gotten to go way deep into that. I don't think there's way many more things to cover that we haven't already talked about a bit. Where the hell is my bullet points on it? Yeah, just his overall confidence in the SEC case, where the ecosystem and DeFi is right now. The fact that he kept saying over and over again, I mean, he literally used the phrase bulletproof about how safe he is multiple times. And I honestly, my biggest takeaway of the whole thing, other than just, him talking about, without getting into specifics, how safe he is and all these things, was just how bullish he was on Pulse X, which I think is huge. And I think many of us have been able to read those tea leaves anyway by simply looking at the Pulse X pulse ratio over the last year. But for that guy to be tweeting about Pulse X so much, showing, it was on Christmas Eve too, that he showed the Pulse X pulse chart and said, guess what chart this is to people.
Right.
He tweeted that out. He's tweeted it out before and said, Pulse X, check it out. Interesting. And showing that stair step, beautiful chart that we've seen so many times. And then he talks about Pulse X primarily, of all, as far as I can remember, of all the tokens that are within his ecosystem, he mainly talked about Pulse X and pumped it up on that Christmas stream. I talked about the deflationary nature of it, just how bullish he was on it. I mean, I off that PDI conversation, off all the parity talk that we always have, I think that leads even more that we're going to see Pulse X pretty much reach price parity with Pulse eventually at some point. Not that it's even all that hugely far off right now, but yeah, what all takeaways, I guess, did you have from his Christmas stream, and any specifics on the Pulse X thing? Because I thought that was huge.
Well, yeah, he's always been very, very bullish on Pulse X. He likes the buy and burn. He has always liked it ever since, even in development, it was one of the things that he talked about a lot, was how cool the buy and burn would be. The bulletproof comment, I think, this goes back to one of our streams where we talked about, and we've talked about it a few times, but I really believe that all of the funds, the sacrifice funds, the OA, I have this feeling that things are in what they call bulletproof trust, located in some island somewhere. That's wherever the trust is located. And even if Finland wanted to take tax money from him, they would have to do it on his personal account. And, a lot of this money is not his personally. So, they can try and come after the billions or whatever they think might be his. I'm going to assume that, everything is in a trust that can't be touched. So that was my big takeaway. Just letting everybody know that he's safe. That was a big thing. I think people were getting a little worried. I don't know if you remember back in the day where he hung out with one of the guys. I could only imagine that if those watches were confiscated, that they would have been taken from his residence. I can't think Richard trusts too many people at his level. You really have to be careful who you trust, and especially with a couple $1 million of watches. I think Brent or Brett or something like that was his name, the guy that had the McLaren in the film. I know they've been friends for a while. He kind of lives over there too. Spent a lot of time together. I would imagine if anybody was holding those, it would have been him. But again, just a speculation. I really don't know for sure, and I can't say other than just guessing. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it was bullish. It calmed some people down. I think at that point there was still some FUD happening, and then of course we get this latest thing about the watches, of course, and
Yeah.
And you know, from what I was reading today, that is a um, reputable source in Finland. It's not some tabloid or whatever. Apparently, they are somewhat trusted. But I did see that Nuclear Herbs had reached out to the officials in Finland asking about
Yes.
the charges to see what information he could get, and nobody's responded. There was
Well,
another.
sorry, I don't want to talk. Go ahead.
Sorry,
I'll let you finish, then I'll say
no one
what I saw.
responded to his other requests. They did respond and said you'll need to reach out to the FBI or something like that. There was a letter that they had written him back. They did, but they wouldn't answer anything about the charges that were out there with the assault or whatever that part of the charge was. So um, somebody else had also inquired about the detective, and they hadn't gotten an answer either regarding any of the charges. So anyway,
Well, the one thing that Herbs did share today, and I don't know if this is what you saw or read, but the official that he was speaking with confirmed that there are no publicly available records of anything that happened. So these articles that are being written in the media in Finland
right.
are based on nothing. I mean, they are not published articles. So he did get that confirmed anyway.
Yes, that doesn't mean so. I don't know how Finland works, and every country is a little bit different. Some of these guys that are over that way could probably elaborate if you're in the comments right now. Um, do they make things public while they're still actively
Right.
searching or whatever? You know, I don't know. They don't want to, as with any investigation, you don't want to put information out before you've had a chance to prosecute or whatever it may be. I don't know how hush hush it goes. So,
Yeah.
there is that possibility of why it's not been made public. But either way, um, it's an assault charge at the very worst. And again, I think the money is in a trust that's not his,
Right.
and that's baseless too. So people are really get freaked out about the littlest things, which some say, well, man, it's not really that little. But it is when you
It's the same as the SEC. It's a shakedown. They just want a piece. That's what it
sure,
is. I
of
mean,
course, they
that's
want
what
a
all this
piece.
shit is.
They want the cooling or the chilling effect, and it happens.
Mhm.
They're still trying to get stuff from Hexo, and I'm sure some of the other Hexicans that were also had sent another subpoena. Again, they're still fishing for more information, and they wouldn't be doing that if they had something. So, they're still digging hard to find things that just aren't there. So
Mhm.
that should provide a little bit of comfort for people to think about that and to realize that if they had something, they would have had it by now, and there just isn't anything out there. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Well, I think that pretty much covers that. So we got a couple real juicy things we can move on to. So if you guys are enjoying the stream so far, do us a favor and hit that like button. We appreciate you being here. Help support Real DeFi. Tell the algorithm that you like and support Real DeFi and Pulse Chain. We appreciate you guys being here. I feel like we're never going to touch on it in any episode if we don't do it this week. So we probably should cover what happened with Alti, which I think is the first time we've even mentioned it on this channel because, I mean, just neither of us were interested in it. But it is a cautionary tale, so we'll talk about this real quick. So 0x Steph, obviously Steph, the man who created the Staker app for Hex back in the day, which I loved, by the way. I know you did too, Ewok, and I think pretty much universally everybody did in the ecosystem. The original Staker app was awesome. To this day, I think it was the best mechanism that we've ever had created to track hex stakes. And it's basically since version 2 got released, which was not good and had all kind of jankiness to it, really haven't had anything as good as it since. Hex Scout is decent, but that original Staker app I thought was terrific. So Steph did a good service by doing that. But, I don't even know the timeline here. I'm going to end up talking out of turn. So I don't want to get everything right on whenever he initially launched this project. I couldn't tell you one thing about the white paper, what it's supposed to do, nothing about it. But he went on like a few channels and was talking about this thing, whatever it did on Ethereum, I believe. And, it's, I guess all I can really talk about is I was never even perked up or interested in it because It's hard for me to tell you why, because, I mean, the receipts are there. If you look back on our channel, we talked about Zen whenever it was going on in October of what, I guess that would have been like 2022 at this point, which is pretty
Yeah.
crazy. And I was kind of intrigued with what Jack was doing at that time and what Zen was all about and stuff like that. And I definitely like minted some wallets, and I know you did a few. And I mean, there's plenty of people within the ecosystem that didn't transition. I don't know if I should use that word, but went into Zen.
Careful.
Yeah. But I mean, there weren't so many people that were just like, oh, I'm a Zen maxi now. I remember like Jim Rat Crypto and that show was like turning into that and everything. Trevon was into it for a while, whatever. He does his own thing. But it became a thing for a little while. And I think it was the timing of it. I think what Jack did at that time was it was like, and Jack Levins, who I'm talking about, he capitalized on the bottom of the bear market. I mean, that was literally like a month out from FTX happening and stuff like that. There was nothing going on. Hex was plummeting. So it was like, oh, what's this ex-Googler guy? Let's check this out. We were kind of looking into it and stuff. So I guess just from me, all I can do is talk about myself personally. The only reason I think I had no interest in this is because there's just way too much more interesting things going on right now, and I'm really intrigued by Pulse Chain. Whereas during like the Zen time, which I'm only comparing them because they're things that are kind of DeFi related that, siphon people from the Hex community and stuff. But this just didn't intrigue me because there's so much better stuff going on right now. So that's all really I can say. Obviously, the story ends up that this thing is live for 4 days before the official Twitter account of Alti tweets that there is a critical flaw. Yeah, there's the tweet. Alti V1 is a failed experiment, which a lot of people had an issue with that word. The tokenomics are critically flawed, likely causing the price to decline indefinitely. Where Jack Levin should have wrote this tweet a few years ago. We strongly advise against depositing or buying Alti any further. That's nice. I don't want to read all 9 of these. I don't know if there's anything. Yeah, because I don't even know how the thing works, so it's not really. I don't know if there's a point really reading any of this, but I did.
Well, we can tell why. Let's tell why. And I think this number 4 is probably the big reason, and it was one of the things that caused it to fail. And the slippage protection in the contract was designed to shield the pump pool from MEV attacks, and ironically, which prevented pumps from triggering at low prices. So it left it stuck in what they called a downward spiral because the pump pool money that was locked in the contract never deployed because people were minting. They were getting such a decent price minting it and selling it that it couldn't protect itself from engaging the pump pool. Which, like he said, left it in a downward spiral. As a result, even deposits lose appeal. So that was what triggered it. Anyway, if you want to go ahead and...
Well, I knew there were some notes that I took out of it whenever I actually read it. Deposit incentives were so strong that people will never buy it on the open market. Again, that kind of sounds like Zen. People didn't actually buy it. Negative feedback loop that causes deposits to even be worthless. Despite thorough tests, audits, we failed to notice this flaw. Working on a solution. Yeah, I don't know what solution they would be working on for people at this point. But essentially, there's also like $7 million of Ethereum that's just locked up in some wallet now forever.
Yes, sir. And at $3,300, $7 million, right? So imagine when that goes to 20,000, whatever it may go.
Yeah.
You've got that. So one of the things that I did want to bring up, and the reason, you said why you weren't interested in this, and one of the reasons why I wasn't interested, and we just never really even talked about it, were 2 big things, right? I loved Staker app as well. It was one of the things where, actually Hex.live was one of the first things that came out that talked about the sharks and the dolphins and the whales and the squids and all that stuff. They were the creators of that whole thing. And Staker app was really cool because it ranked you. It got to show you different wallets. You could monitor things easily. You could use it as an onboarding tool. People could get in. You could do your stakes right there. And then when version 2 went, which we thought was kind of sideways, it kind of lost the plot. There were a lot of people that, well, let's move forward. Once they decided to stop supporting it, and kind of threw up a website and said, "Here you go, you're on your own." That was my first really worrisome thing about Steph, because I know he's an intelligent guy. He's very smart. And so that was red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 was there was a referral system with Staker as well that people never got paid for 2 years. And I think finally when Steph was trying to close the door, he finally ended up paying out some of the bigger people that had made some decent money with it. But by then it was too little too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just one of those things that I felt like it was being done just to save face, so that people can't say that I didn't follow through. So, 2 red flags as with anything is enough for me. Now, I will say, and I'm going to tie this kind of what? Are you
Not
laughing at
you.
me?
A comment.
Oh,
A comment.
okay.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
One of the things that I am worried about is a reload, right? Let's come out with a second version of this. We think
That's
we
pretty
made it.
much what I just put on the screen. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, kind
okay,
of. Yeah.
okay. So I'm going to urge strongly against any kind of reload when something fails and they try to fix it and whatnot. I'm going to tie this back. We're going to go back to the early Hex days, when Hex was being developed, and this was more so in the Telegram channels, and ideas were being passed around by a lot of people. There was the early Hex chat. I think there were probably only 3,000, 5,000 people in it at this time.
Right.
And it's kind of when Dev Kyle made his appearance, right? And told Richard and said, "Hey, I think there's a problem with what you want to do. I ran some models, and I think there's a flaw. I think the early recurring short stakers are going to outweigh your long stakers. And if your goal is to have long-term commitment, there would be no point. You're kind of defeating the purpose by allowing these guys to do short rolling stakes. They're going to outperform." And that's when the whole T-share thing came into play. So my point is, no matter how smart you are, no matter how much thought you've put into this, there will be someone smart out there that can probably figure out these things. And I don't know what kind of team Steph had, but when you had that many people looking at it in the Telegram, there was a couple smart people out there that said, "Hey, there's an issue. Let's fix it." And again, that's when the T-share system was created. So apparently there wasn't a whole lot of feedback with it. Yes, they found this problem, but what if there are other problems? Like you found the one critical flaw. There might be more than one, because audits aren't going to find test simulation, real life type things, right? They're not gonna, if there is a run on people selling, your audit isn't going to tell you that there's a problem. They're only going to tell you if the code is bad, or if it doesn't work, or if there's a backdoor or admin keys when you say there aren't, things like that. So yeah, I would strongly recommend anybody stay away from any kind of reload of a V2. And I think we've fixed it. But still, you've got $7 million out there now that can't be touched. And I know the Alti folks were caught just the other day dumping a bunch as well of whatever was remaining to try to soak up some liquidity that was out there. So anyway, that's my point. Like I said, I kind of twist it back to the early Hex days, where you need as many eyes and intelligent people looking at this stuff. And, Steph said it was his life's work. Again, how many people were working on it? Was he the only one coding it? We'll never know, or I don't really even want to know at this point, but it was missed. And I don't know. I don't know if it was rushed or just careless or or what it was. I don't like to accuse anybody of anything intentional. I don't think it was intentional at all.
I don't really either. I don't really
think
either.
it was malicious at all either. And I do commend them for coming out as early as they did, saying that, hey, we found a flaw. Please don't put any more money into it. Commendable, because these guys, a lot of these guys took a long time to try and build a reputation. I mean, I know Silver the Antidote was another one that was pushing this. He was very into it. He was supporting Steph along the way. These guys build a reputation for years and years and get followers. And then when you get people wrecked, man, it can take as little as hours to destroy your reputation.
Yeah.
So it's just something you really have to be careful of. And that's why we're in an odd position to talk about new things and you think about it. And, the last thing we want to do is get any of our followers wrecked. Everybody's down enough as it is just buying core things. Nothing has happened where there's been rug pulls or flaws in code or anything like that. But, again, it's quite the responsibility that we have talking about things.
One thing I will say, and this is by no means like defending Steph or Alti or anything. Like I said, I wasn't really interested in it, and you weren't either. But some of the people that are like dunking on everybody and showing the receipts of people who were in on it or whatever. I mean, it's one thing. You also have to be smart. Like, for example, Zen. Like, I would call my experience with it horrible. I mean, there's I'm not going to call Jack a failure or what he did a failure yet, because whatever, who cares? But I mean, frankly, I mean, like, you could also call what you've gotten so far in Pulse Chain a failure in terms of like the price action, not in terms of the price. And I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that, like, when it comes to things like Alti, Zen, little things like that pop up, whatever it may be that catches your eye, do what I imagine a guy like Corey Geary did, who I think he actually interviewed Steph. I'm pretty sure he did, and got in on it. Do you think Corey Geary put in an overwhelmingly significant portion of his wealth into this thing? No, I don't think so. He's not a dumb guy.
I hope not.
Well, and even based off his reaction from it, I could tell he was like, whatever. But the people that did do that, what the hell are you doing? I mean, like, it's okay to dabble. Like, again, I admit it. I mean, I did with Zen. I know Randy Hilarski talked about doing it with Zen. A number of people did. But you still have to protect yourself. And if you want to mess around with stuff like that pops up, that's totally fine. It's almost like with meme coins and stuff, or different things that you experiment with. That's fine. But just be very careful with it. That's all. Yeah. And obviously Richard had a tweet on presumably the Alti stuff. He didn't, of course, say what he was talking about, but yeah, you just have to be careful out here, especially now. I mean, we're in what's going to be the biggest scam year overall with things popping up. You just have to be careful. Again, and not saying that Alti was a scam, like you said. I think it just failed and they missed it. Yeah.
Well, and again, that was the problem. And that was one of the things that Richard mentioned was when you sell good things to buy bad things, it almost amplifies and doubles the pain. So, so there's that. So again, if you throw like DGen Moonboy here says, I got $1.06 in my Zen account,
right.
If you throw a couple bucks and you pay for a couple wallets to mint them, what do you got? 20, 30 bucks, maybe 50 bucks.
Yeah.
I don't think I spent too much more than that. Maybe a little bit, but not much. And it was all fresh capital. So that is the one lesson to, whereas if you're going to play with these new protocols or whatever, please use fresh capital. Don't try to sell something to make a great move, because you get double kicked in the balls if your other thing that you sold goes way up and that one goes, kaput. So
yeah. Boy, we're running long tonight. I feel like we have to hit this next thing. So yeah, be careful as far as new things launching out there in 2025. We have to talk about this stuff with Charles Hoskinson of Cardano over the last day. He's gotten saucy. I don't know what's gotten into Charles here. He's also a much younger man than I realized. Somehow that guy is only 37 years old, I found out. But Charles Hoskinson, so a weird thing. So he was being interviewed yesterday with, I never remember how to pronounce the guy's last name, David Gothenstein or whatever. I know that he has interviewed, I'm pretty sure he's interviewed RH in the past too, actually, and many other crypto people. But Charles was on with him yesterday, and Nuclear Herbs brought this all to everybody's attention. But there's a blip in the beginning for a few minutes where they are discussing the SEC reformation, the SEC's cases right now and what's going on. And there was a moment where Charles, I am paraphrasing, but he, mentioned some of the SEC cases that are going on right now. And he mentioned, well, there's the Hex and Pulse Chain one, but that one also has, criminal allegations or criminal. He definitely mentioned like criminal aspects to it as well.
So
let's just play it.
Okay. I'm getting echo on it. I don't know if it'll go ahead. See if it does now.
So there's going to now be behind the scenes negotiations on these types of things about what and where gets unwinded. So I think things like what's going on with Hex, for example, will not get unwound, and Pulse Chain, because there's actually criminal allegations there, whereas civil allegations, those types of things will probably end up being either settled for de minimis amounts and everybody moves on and just forgets about it, or they actually dismiss the lawsuit. So there's going to now be behind the scenes.
So he mentions criminal stuff there as well. There's no criminal charges really anywhere. There's no criminal charges affiliated with the SEC. So there's that. And as people who are on microphones too, or on cameras, like sometimes when you're just speaking, you don't maybe say exactly what you mean right away. But Charles double, triple, quadrupled down later on Twitter when he was discussing things with people. I don't know why he felt compelled to do this. I mean, we can think of why. But right there, he misrepresents what's going on with Hex and Pulse Chain. And so in a subtle manner, I mean, Herbs basically called him out on Twitter and, asked him what was up with it. And then we see some of the responses from Charles, which are pretty weird, to be honest. So if you scroll up, that was Katie, I think. Yeah. So she says, I know you have a personal disgruntled background with Richard Hart. This case is a civil case. The personal case for tax evasion is separate. Last I checked, ADA has a roadmap. Hexo pointed this out too. ADA has ADA being Cardano, of course, Charles Hoskinson's blockchain, had an ICO and has expectations. Our two communities have always gotten along. The two founders haven't. Pulse Chain is a threat to you because it's already overtook you in TVL, like by a significant factor. Projects launched and native stablecoins, despite your chain being 4+ years older. Both chains and founders can win, but you rooting for Richard's downfall will most likely cause your own. So he responds, this is where it's wild to me, like why even get into this? He says, Pulse Chain is not a threat. We have never had a single conversation. There is no ecosystem or technical innovation, referring to Pulse Chain. This is the part, right? Yeah. Just look in the mirror, dude. Bag holding makes you believe weird stuff. Who are you talking to, Charles? Who are you talking to?
I think he's talking to himself.
I think he might be. And then KDP goes on to do her thing, obviously, back and forth with him.
Well, she said, but you have had conversations because he's tweeted to Richard. I mean, maybe not a conversation, but it's right here that Charles was talking to Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
maybe not lengthy conversations, but that's not all. There's more. So I think I sent you another one. And I think there was even another one maybe I didn't send you that was horrible too. Yeah. Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah. Okay. Now this one, I understand that people haven't really been focusing on this one because it's not as saucy. I understand that, but this just reeks of shit. Okay. So this is him responding to Corey Costa, who, wants to get him on his show to interview him about Cardano and stuff like that, which is fine. And Hoskinson replies to him, Corey, I've been in this space for 14 going on 15 years. And one of the things I've noticed is a systematic lack of courage amongst the podcasters and media to call a spade a spade. Now, keep in mind, he's referring to what's going on with Richard Hart, Hex, Pulse Chain. Then we get surprised when we see a Craig Wright or SBF get away with so much. Okay, so what is he intimating there? So he involves what happened with SBF and FTX in the last bull run. with what may or may not be going on with Pulse Chain or Hex right now, which is interesting. He says people are terrified of pissing off cult members, and thus they say nothing. Speaking of saying nothing, this fucking paragraph, they say nothing while they see bad things happen. At what point do we say there are some serious problems and questions that need to be addressed here? He has no idea what he's talking about. I mean, and maybe he doesn't. Maybe it's fine that he's not abreast of like the latest things going on Pulse Chain. I wouldn't necessarily expect him to be, but then I also wouldn't expect him to be talking about it then, if you don't know. So,
right. Well, he only knows what he's heard probably from
yeah,
other people. He is not doing any kind of research or background on any of this. Like we are involved with it every single day, Yeah. So he's going based on what these people are saying, not doing any kind of, another problem with society is what? Not doing any fact checking, not finding out what the truth is. He's essentially listening to CNN to get his news. So, I think that's what we've got a product of here. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's just kind of rambling. And that's what you get. So happens.
Yeah. It's just very weird. And of course, so again, we talked about it earlier today. I mean, my whole timeline, yours too, is basically overtaken with people just dunking on Charles and dunking on Cardano today and showing that Pulse Chain is what, 6th in TBL right now. And he's 46th. It's like 6 times the amount of volume Pulse Chain has over Cardano.
Right.
Yeah.
And Bitfinesse brought up this, that you and I were talking about this earlier, had no idea that he was only 37 years old.
Yeah.
He looks like he's 50.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah. I don't know what that's about. I saw him doing an ice bath. Yeah. I saw him doing an ice bath before. I don't know if it's effects or working or not for him, but yeah, but I'm just going through my notes of some other things. I guess that's mostly everything that he said. Just calling us bag holders and stuff like that. I mean,
and then Corey jumped in with, I've always been critical, and Corey has been critical of things, but this goes on to back and forth a good bit. So
yeah, anyway. It's just a lot of, I just can't believe that Charles is being a reply guy to this extent in this whole conversation. I mean, he just would not let up and continue to tweet on this stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. It's strange to me. I mean, I understand making the mistake and saying what you said in the interview, not understand as in like it's okay, but like if you don't know what you're talking about and you say things, but then to like mix it up with people in the ecosystem. I think he clearly is threatened actually. And he's been in this position before too. Like Cardano before the last bull run was what, 98% down, wants the help of XRP and to partner with them against the world. And now that Charles doesn't need anybody's help and he's to where he is right now, he doesn't give a shit about anything else anymore. So,
well, and then I think I had sent it to you earlier, the video of Richard listing off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 problems that Cardano has that are issues with the blockchain and things that you can't do with it. So there's that too. So interesting stuff.
Yeah. I imagine that we won't hear too much from him. It's like when anything happens like this with the ecosystem or people talk about things they don't know about, like they're here whenever things are bad and they'll dunk on it and say all these things. And then like later, if it's done a 30, 50x or something like that, you're never going to hear from them again, but then they'll come back out and talk about it again when the prices go down. It's just kind of what they do,
Yeah.
So yeah. I think that's probably a solid place to end since we're kind of running up against 8 o'clock here. But we do, of course, have the Hex conference going on right now. Tonight will be night number 3 over on Matty Allen's channel. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ewok, but I think he's been simulcasting that on other channels too, I think I saw. But I know it's coming from Matty's anyway. And what are there, 4 total nights? I know we're on night number 3.
Yeah, I think this was the Aubrey de Grey night. He was the keynote speaker tonight about his, he's no longer with Sen's Foundation. Obviously, they tried to take a bunch of money that was donated from the Hexicans, and so he went on to do his own thing. But I think that's for tonight. So yeah, But I don't know of the other channels that are simulcasting as well.
I may have made that up. I don't know.
You may have. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I hadn't
Yeah.
heard that.
I want to let me just get your thoughts on this. I didn't really want this to be a topic, but I guess we could say it real quick because people coming into this are like, oh, you know, Maddie launched his own token and did this and did that, and you know, I'm going to boycott it. Which, you know, that's your own prerogative if you don't want to attend or watch the stream or something like that. But then people that are like, we need somebody else running it. Why isn't there somebody else running it? Why is it Maddie? And it's like, well, I have an answer for you because nobody else is fucking doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I understand if you don't like the guy or whatever, you have issues. I mean, no two people in this ecosystem are going to see eye to eye, but it's like, all right, well, do the work. Who else is doing the work? I don't see anybody else doing all this stuff. And, you know, hate on Maddie all you want, think he's weird, think he did this or did that or whatever. And maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But when it comes to putting on this conference and the consistency and stuff like that, he's doing the work that I don't see other people doing to do it. So start your own. Start your own conference. You know, sure, people would attend. You know,
I agree. People like to complain, throw shade against people that are doing things because they don't like how it's being done. You know, there's one thing you can always say about Matty is he cares about the community. He cares about, you know, onboarding people. I don't know how much the Hex conferences do as far as onboarding, because it, you know, it does become an echo chamber of the same people talking and things like that. So, you know, the one thing that I don't care for is making it public. Well, I'm going to boycott it. And this is why you air your dirty laundry. I would rather people just decline. You know,
I'm going to Blue Sky instead of Twitter. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, that's one thing I wasn't a fan of seeing, but you know, it is what it is. You've got a lot of personalities, right? There's a lot of, you're going to have that as the community gets bigger. There's going to be a lot of personalities that you may not agree with or whatever. But you know, I support most everybody unless they've, you know, tried to take money from good people. So I don't think Maddie's done that. I know Maddie has made money on the conferences, but it's all gone right back in. So, you know, I can say that confidently. So anyway, that is tonight. Yep. So tune in afterwards if you feel like it. And if you don't, don't.
I think it's one of those things that you're in this kind of silo of this ecosystem. So you get blind because you're so far into it that you can't zoom out to see that it is actually a net positive overall for the ecosystem. Sure. And again, like you said, like maybe it isn't a ton of onboarding because it is like just the people that we already know all talking to each other, but it is another thing in the crypto space that's usually pretty highly attended and you know, it's not happening in other communities. So people should
it gets a lot of views. And you know, there are maybe people that are in the community that hear stories for the first time that they didn't know. Or you know, it does maybe allow them to get to know people a little bit better, or again, a story that they hadn't heard before, or you know, the origin stuff is always interesting. Like, you know, like I did tonight, the story when Dev Kyle came into the Telegram chat and said, "Hey, I think we got a problem here." It's a cool story. It's a cool history to know.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
And how things kind of evolve from the early days. And you know, that is one good thing, that even if it is the same community listening, that you can hear those type of things and get backstories. You know, it's neat to find out different things about different people that are interesting.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with you. So night number 3 of the Hex Conference taking place tonight. We will be back here next Wednesday night, same time, same channel, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do this every week at that time. It'll be January the 15th. Will we have a decision from the SEC case from Judge Carroll? We will see. It's coming up shortly. Appreciate all of you guys being here tonight. First night back after a couple of weeks. Checks My Pulse, DJ Moo Boy, Valiant, Low Key, Acid Thunder. Don't know how to pronounce that. Alaska Fisherman, Bitfinex, of course. I saw Crypto 7 pop in here earlier.
I saw 7 as well.
It must be 1 or 2 a.m. or something like that over there. So kudos to him showing up. Yeah, lots of others too. We appreciate Trev Newman. I didn't recognize your name, but you had good stuff tonight. Hex Rockstar as well. RH Max was in here. NJ Dub. I liked your joke. A lot of good people in here tonight. So appreciate you. We will be back next week, same time, same channel for Crypto Ewok. This has been Broke Boy Crypto right here on the Creed of Crypto.